This is Tiffany Rosier, the host of the Afros and Knives podcast. We use the Anchor podcasting app to create and distribute the show. Creating a podcast on Anchor is effortless. It allows you to record a high-quality podcast and distribute it everywhere, including Google Podcast and Apple Podcast. They distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. No fancy equipment or podcasting experience is necessary, and it's 100% free. As long as you have a story to tell, Anchor is the platform to use. Share your story through audio using the Anchor app for Android, iPhone, or your desktop. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Welcome back to the Afros and Knives podcast, the interview series featuring Black women working and leading in food and beverage, food media, food science, food justice, and hospitality. I am your host, Tiffany Rosier, and this week's conversation is with Eating Fabulously's Christopher Stewart. Chris is a classically trained chef, influencer, and tastemaker. She is the founder of the Mies Group, a chef and restaurant management group specializing in helping small culinary brands and businesses get everything into its proper place. Be sure to subscribe to the Eating Fabulously blog and check out what Chris is doing with the Mies Group. If you've started to make your gift list, be sure to add cookbooks to the mix. They are the gifts that keep on giving. The 10 Speed Press has released some amazing titles this year, one of a few saving graces of 2020. Vegetable Kingdom by Bryant Terry, that comes complete with a tool and pantry guide and a dope-ass soundtrack that is also available on Spotify. In BB's Kitchen by Hawa Hassan and Julie Turshin. This cookbook goes beyond just incredible recipes. It captures the love and warmth of a grandmother's love, and it honors the rich culinary contributions of women living in the 8 African countries that touch the Indian Ocean. And Jubilee by Toni Tipton Martin, a celebration of the unsung masters of American cooking and a collection of recipes from 2 centuries of African American cooking. This season of the Afros and Knives podcast is sponsored by 10 Speed Press and is made possible through the generous contributions of our Patreon community. Visit patreon.com/Afros and Knives to become a patron of the show. I am currently in the middle of raising funds for season 4 of the Afros and Knives podcast. Thanks to Talenti and Black Food Folks for their generosity in awarding the show a $5,000 grant, which brings me to 50% of the goal. Actually, we're at 56% at this point. We finally crossed over the $6,000 mark, so we are actually less than half that we have to get raised and funded. To make a pledge and become a backer, you can visit the Afros and Knives website, or you can make a donation directly through Venmo, PayPal, or our fundraising site at gogetfunding.com/Afros and Knives. If you enjoy listening to the podcast as much as I enjoy making it, you can download, subscribe, and leave a comment. I love to hear your feedback. So don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter so you can stay up to date on new guests and other Afros and Knives news. And now let's get into this interview with Chris.
Hi all, my name is Christopher Stewart. I am a classically trained chef and a food and lifestyle influencer here in New York City. I have a food and lifestyle website appropriately titled Eating Fabulously. On my website, I talk about restaurants, my lifestyle finds, and I also make recipes with 15 ingredients or less. They are all seasonal, and I try to get you in and out of the kitchen in under an hour. I am now focusing on my biggest project, which is the Me Group, my own chef and restaurant management company that I have launched and I am working on right now. And thank you for having me.
We can start from the end and work our way back. So let's talk about this Me's group, because of course the moment we are currently in with the restaurant industry overall does not mean I keep telling people it doesn't necessarily mean um, there aren't opportunities for growth and for new things. And so at this point, how is the launch working right now? Why time your launch for this moment? Like, what did you see happening in the market that was like, you know what, this still is going to work because I know what I'm because of what you were looking at, and not necessarily this whole like, oh, restaurants are going to close and the industry's suffering. And I was just like, yeah, at the same time, in every tragedy there's always a small window of opportunity for like greatness. So explain talk to me about your thinking behind like, let's launch this and let's get it going. Like, how are your clients doing and that kind of thing.
So actually, just to backtrack, I have been working on the Needs Group pretty much my entire restaurant career. I just wasn't aware of it. So every restaurant job that I've had, I've always been like a fixer. So I would start with one task and then I complete that, and then the higher ups would be like, you know what, I need you to do this, I need you to do that. And then I just always fix something. So I've been working on the Muse Group unknowingly for a really long time. But the Muse Group is a chef and restaurant management company that I came up with because I noticed that, no matter how many people you have on staff, no matter how full the restaurant is, something is always missing. Something always goes undone. No matter how good your team is, something is always not finished. So I just took that window and said, you know what? I want to help fix that window. I want to help fill that void. So I just started looking at things like, okay, the menu on the website and the menu that's printed on the table sometimes are not the same. How can I fix that? Chefs are always busy and they never have business cards. They never have things that they need when they're out. How can I fix that? And it's been a slow build. Like this project of mine, I wanted it to be my complete job. So I've been taking my time on it, and then coronavirus happened, and I got laid off from a hospitality group where I had my hands in 12 restaurants at the time, and I was about to have 16 restaurants, and then coronavirus happened, and I was like, you know what? This is my time to start fully within these groups. Restaurants are going to need major help, and I now is the time for me to just jump and start helping. And that's what happened. I mean, one restaurant called me within a month and was like, we have been closed for 4 months. We're trying to revamp and we need you. And it just took off from there. I have 3 clients in total. One is a full restaurant. One is a late night comedy sketch show. And another client is a restaurant consultant. So it really it fell into place right as coronavirus was happening, which is totally weird because it's like you hear all the time businesses say, I started in tragedy. I started in a recession. I started my company in hardship. And that's what I feel like I am accomplishing right now.
See, that's good. That's good. You know, it's incredible that like as things have kind of dialed down in other spaces, like being ready this whole time, like since you've been working on it for so long, it was like, okay, no, but I'm ready. Like this particular chapter might be closed, but it was like, okay, but the opportunity for me to pivot and me make this my full-time work has shown itself. So just to have enough confidence to just go, okay, well, let's just do this. Let's just walk on into it. It's the right season.
Absolutely.
I'm already prepared. I have what I need. I know what I need to know. The work is already proven. I'm already proven to do it. So why not? Now,
Absolutely.
how have your current clients been doing? I know, like, for them, it's been a pivot. For you, managing like shifts and changes is what you do. So for them, I know, a lot of people have reached out and asked me about. I just need information about, like, how do we pivot this restaurant? How do we go from like dine in to take out? So what's been kind of your advice to this new clients to help them start to weather the storm a bit?
So I don't think any restaurant will ever be ready for something that is currently happening. You know, I and my chef friends, we literally watched our prize industry crumble within 72 hours, right? And at first, I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. I think it took me maybe like 3 weeks to fully wrap my mind around the restaurant industry that I love so much, that I have been in for 12 years, that I like sleep, eat, breathe, has crashed. So once I got that fog off of my, head, I was like, okay, one, I need to take a step back because we're going to need a lot of hospitality. Like, we're going to need fine tuned touches when these restaurants get back up and running. So I went back to this book, Setting the Table by restaurateur Danny Meyer. And I think everyone in the restaurant world has probably read this book at some point in life. And I was like, okay, I need to go back to hospitality. That was one thing I did. The second thing I did was I listened to every chef conference, every restaurant conference, every restaurant Zoom that I could in a month's time. I was like, I need to see what people are doing. I need to see how people are handling this. So I was on a Zoom every day for a month with just restaurant chefs across the country trying to figure it out. And then the third thing I did was once I calmed down and got all those notes, I was like, okay, it doesn't seem like this is going to get any better. So how can we handle this? So with my restaurant clients that I have now, I made a really big fuss about plating the food in takeout containers the way you would plate it on a plate. We are in a time of only takeout, and I think we will be in that space for a really long time. And the price of food has also gone up. So not only is it that we can't sit down and have that full sensory hospitality experience that we love, we have to find a way to bring that to you. So my main thing was plate the food in this takeout box the way you would take it, the way you would plate it on a plate. That just adds that one step, that extra touch to a takeout box. And then restaurants are really heavy, and I'm not doing this. And I've seen the world British chefs back up and say, well, I said I wasn't going to do that, but now I have to do that. So it's just, I'm trying to build a robust takeout menu. Chefs, when we create our menus, we don't create them to go. We create them to sit at a table, and you have time, and you hone all these flavors and other things like that. We can't have that right now. So I made a menu for the restaurant that can be taken out, that can travel, that can last in a warm, moist takeout box, which a lot of people don't think about. And literally the laws here change every day. So it's just keeping up with the laws, not being flustered when the time changes, or not being flustered when, the price of food rises. It's just trying to find a way to work through this as best as we can and still provide the hospitality. So it's extra branding, it's extra, incentives to come into the restaurant with us, which is all those things that we have to try to work towards to bring back our customer and to trust. Like they have to trust us as much as we have to trust them. It's been quite the experience my first time out the gate.
Wow. I mean, it's just so much. It's so much to consider and think about. And I appreciate the fact that like you went back to hospitality.
Yeah. Like literally, it was a no-brainer. I was like, I have to go back to square one. What makes a restaurant good? What makes people want to come to a restaurant? And what will make people want to come to a restaurant even though they are terrified? So I really had to go back and start from square one.
That's like the paramount question. Like, what makes people want to come back even when they are terrified? It's some in greater, some because of their imaginations, other people because they know how to read. But to talk about your those hospitality thoughts. I mean, have you spent any time like working in restaurant or not restaurants, hotels and like that kind of scenario, or when did the kind of that hospitality conversation enter your career space? Because not everyone I know, especially like food people that I know, really think about the experience from a hospitality point of view. It's just like, okay, let's get these plates in front of people. Let's make sure they eat and they have a nice meal. And, servers don't drop anything and things are hot. So they cover the basics, but hospitality is such a different vibe. And like, I've split my time.
Hospitality is a range. It's wide.
It's a whole thing. And like, I've spent time working in hotels and I've spent time working in restaurants. And like, I always tell people, I'm like, my experience working in like luxury properties has influenced my work as a chef, all for years now, because it's just a different level. It's a different mindset, a different level of service.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. My grandfather was a chef. So I got all of this from him, but I left all of the times that he actually was a chef in hotels. Like his thing was hotels. Whereas my thing, as I grew up and I was trying to find what type of chef I wanted to be, my thing was restaurants. Like I like that high volume, constant changing, think on your feet pressure of being in a restaurant, where he was like a hotel chef. He had like banquets and catering and all that stuff. But from a very young age, like he instilled in me hospitality. So any hotel that he worked at, we ate in, we stayed in, we lived in at one point. And I got to see firsthand how he was handling his staff and handling his, his kitchen. I don't think I've ever heard him yell at anyone, whether that be myself or his staff. Also, the women in my family are in fashion and retail. And believe it or not, that's also a form of hospitality and customer service. So I get to see my mom and my grandmother deal with their clients on a certain level as well. So I kind of have always seen a certain level of hospitality that I knew I wanted to provide once I got in the restaurant. And I just always carried that with me. When I'm out in a restaurant, how do I want to be treated? How do I want to be treated when I'm in a hotel? So exactly. I take that with me and I try to translate that when I'm working. And hospitality, like you cannot have a ego when you work in hospitality. So I do pride myself on removing that side and trying to focus on what the guest is actually talking about. So that all comes into play when I'm at work.
Well, I appreciate it because it definitely makes you can always tell when someone's kind of leading with that part of their brain and when they're not in a place, because you're just like, ooh, okay, this is not any time. I don't want to spend any more time in here. Now, to that point, I do follow you on Twitter, and no, you out here doing the Lord's work on Twitter. Don't you worry about it. And because you are, and I tell people, I'm like, no, I'd love people who have like a clarity of thought, who have, who understand exactly their worldview, and they stand by what they see and how they see it, and who are able to express it. And that's exactly what I get from you on Twitter. It's like, no, she knows her own mind and she knows exactly what she's saying. And it's like, look, if you didn't want to hear about that, you shouldn't have showed up here. So it's all right. So
I love Twitter.
it's really like, yes, I don't have to have no conversations with you about this. I'm going to let you know in 160 characters exactly where my mind is, and then we go move on. But because you're so skilled at that, because I find, like I said, your opinions are so concise and on the nose. I was like, you know what I want to, how do I want to structure this conversation? And I was like, you know what? Christopher has some opinions about some things, and that's what I need to know. I need to understand her mind about a couple of things. So
I love that my ranting on Twitter changed the structure of our.
I was like, I need to be respectful about this, because you know what? Not everybody is out here using Twitter like this, and the people who do, like you, and I think Davita, and this is a handful of women who are like, nah, what you're not going to do is come on this Twitter and not get your mind right. So for looking the way you're seeing things right now in the restaurant space, and like, because of course you're working with very specific clients with very specific problems you're solving, but overall, like what you saw before COVID and what the possibilities could be. So like, in your opinion, what was kind of the top 3 things that we were absolutely getting wrong, and what we should be working on getting right on the other side of this? And this can be all restaurants, it can be Black-owned restaurants, it can be any of that. But like, I know I was like, somewhere in the back of her mind, I know she was like, see, if y'all had done this right the first time, we wouldn't be having these conversations right now. So you can limit it to 3, but it was just like, what were we getting wrong before, and what do we have the opportunity to get right once we get back into just doing business, within dining?
I think my number one of what we were getting wrong in the restaurants prior to COVID was not trying new things, which, as we see, COVID has forced us to try new things and try them quickly. So typically restaurants have like their own structure, it's fast-paced, like all restaurants are pretty much set up the same structure-wise, unless there's that one restaurant who kind of like, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing. But COVID really highlighted, in my opinion, that restaurants can be flexible. We were just choosing not to be, because we were running off of something that was working. So like I said prior, restaurants had to-go boxes in-house if you didn't finish your meal, but they weren't creating menus around food that can be taken out. Restaurants have the capacity to sell at-home kits, as we see, have the capacity to turn their extra space into fun grocer type situation. So I think our number one problem was no one was really thinking out of the box in terms of making extra income, which now I believe that will be a huge thing in the long run. Is let's keep our side, grocery store. Let's keep our takeout drinks if the law allows it. That's number one. Number 2, I felt like we all just kind of like lost our sternness with the customer. I'm one of those people that know for a fact the customer is not always right, but we need the customer's dollars. So I find that it's always that tug between keeping our restaurant standards intact and also being flexible with the customer. So I think now we need to go back to those firm standards and know that sometimes a customer will ruin your business. Like, you've been to customers enough they will close you down because you did not stand firm on what you're trying to achieve. And then the third thing I think that we will see change is how restaurants treat their staff. I mean, myself included, I was laid off. I've had chef friends who lost all their clients. I have restaurant friends who like completely the bottom fell out. So now moving forward, I think restaurants will treat their employees a little bit differently, a little bit nicer, with a little bit more care.
So what I'm hearing is that restaurants were missing a huge hospitality component. Because
And it's funny because you think you go to a restaurant and you have hospitality, but when you really examine what hospitality is, I think some restaurants have started to drop the ball on that. There's a lot of restaurants that do great but lack hospitality, and then there's a lot of restaurants who have great hospitality and then lack other ways. So I think it's just a overall.
This is true. This is true. I know that working in a hotel, like the big thing was always creating a guest experience that was like 360 degrees, and so you have like a concierge on hand, because like whatever that person needs or requests, like it's our job, it's our privilege to make something happen, create something, find something. And like some of the best hotel experiences people have is when they walk in and somebody remembers their name and what room they stayed in last time, and that they like dinner at a certain time and they prefer this particular table, and all of those little details. And I think you're absolutely right. If restaurants can go ahead and like you were right. You were so close to doing it. It was something we absolutely were capable of doing, is learning how to stay flexible and agile and not like honestly committed to a system and a business model that didn't work and has never really worked. Restaurants are one of the only businesses I know that get a pass on being profitable. Like people will look at a restaurant and think it's normal for them to be like hanging on by a thread, because if it was any other business, you would be like, why are you guys still open? Why haven't you gone bankrupt yet? Why would people continue to invest dollars into what you're doing when you can't seem to when you're barely keeping it together? And restaurants really got a pass.
Yeah, and it's funny. I tell people all the time, your favorite 2-star, 3-star restaurants internally are hanging on by a thread. They're day by day, there's a threat of them closing their doors, and they just have to make it to the end of the night. But to go back to what you were saying is that restaurants, I think restaurants have lost the art of like capturing the customer. I've been a reservationist for a long time. Once I stopped cooking, and to be a reservationist, you have to know your customer. You have to know what customer is walking in at what time. You have to know their birthday. You have to know their wine choice. You have to know where they want to sit. And I think that restaurants are so busy that they kind of lost that art of trying to learn their customer, which I think will come back now that things have changed drastically.
I'm sitting here on mute, just chatting it up. I'm going to be all right. I was like, what is happening right now? Okay, Tiff, you cool. That's what editing is for. What I was saying was like the relationship between like diners and restaurants, and the fact that I think for a while we found that we were like, restaurants were taking it for granted that people would just show up to eat, and that they could really just kind of get by on like the bare minimum. Okay, the place is clean. No, everyone's showered today. No one's rude. Most of the orders have gone out, on time, and they're hot and they're correct. And that's all people required. And for me, I was always like, but is that all you require? Like, for me, you're the one creating the experience. And while restaurants aren't solely about the food, you want to make sure that everything points back to it. And so, like I used to tell my sister, I'm like, we would go in a place, and if the service is terrible, you don't even think about the food.
Exactly.
It doesn't even matter if it's immaculate and delicious and fantastic, and the back of house has been working its butt off. Like that front of house, like, hey, this did not work out. Um, so, and at the same time, like you could have this gorgeous front of house experience where everything looks amazing and everyone sounds amazing and is, your wait staff is just on point and doing their hardest, doing their best work, and the food falls short of that experience. Even if the food isn't bad, it just falls short of the level of service. And like the one thing there's the property I opened in Arizona. The one thing we did for like pre-opening was figure out how to make sure that everyone was working together at the same levels, and that like if you came in to the main drive and the valet grabbed your car, the experience started there. And so when you came in and the bellman got your luggage, and then they brought you to the front desk, and then we would get you checked in for guest services, like each moment just built on and added on. Like there was no point where like the energy fell, or everything was great, but then I got to my room and this happened. So there was never, we always were looking for like a thread or a standard that everybody held, no matter what job.
And I tell people that all the time. I like to call it like the 5 points of, like 4 to 5 points of when you go out. Like it really starts, number one, is when the customer thinks about you. And then they head to your website to look at the menu, or they head to your Instagram. So it literally starts when the customer thinks that they want to join you. And then it's, okay, I want to, how do I contact them? Do I want to make a reservation, or do I want to call the restaurant? So then they make a reservation. Was the reservation seamless? Was it easy? Could they get the time that they wanted? Or if they chose to call, did the reservationist know exact pinpoint to ask? Did they? It's a whole process. Mm-hmm. Then by the time they get to the restaurant, that's number 3. By the time the customer puts their hand on the handle to walk in your restaurant, they've already had 2 prior notions with you. So now they're here, they arrive. What's happening? Is there music playing? Is the dining room buzzing? Is the menu clear? Has the server come touch the table? Are the glasses filled? Like, just all these things that come into play before they even get their food. Like, is their food okay? Has their food come out on time? Did the server explain their food to them? And then they eat and they have a great time. And I also learned throughout my career that sometimes signing out triggers negative emotions, which you don't think happens. But if a person has a bad day and they come to your restaurant, something in that restaurant can also trigger them to have a bad experience. So that person, for example, can hate lamb chops because their grandmother, when they were growing up, was mean to them, and she made hot lamb chops, and because she was mean, the lamb chops in your restaurant triggers them because they also had a bad day. So it's just like this line that flows through to the customer that you really have to pay attention to, and it's what I learned to pay attention to, which is why I started the news group. And then that last step is the thoughts your customer has after they leave your restaurant and they're about to write that review online, which could take anywhere from a day to 3 days. So in the 3 days that they've left you, they should still be thinking about you in a great way. But it's a whole ebb and flow of things that happen. It's just not a plate of food.
I hope everybody's taking notes. Because while we may not be in school right now, there are some nuggets to learn, especially because people are either coming into this space for the first time, they are developing like new products to sell, or they're not in a restaurant anymore, and so they're developing. I mean, I've seen it pop off quite a bit. Like people are developing spice lines, and they're going from in-house or in-room dining or in-house dining to take out to retail, or they're doing the e-commerce. It's like there's just a lot of new spaces people are trying to get into to generate income, because like you said, we are now forced to really go outside of the box we built, much to our own chagrin at this point. It's like, oh man, I thought I'd be able to just go into this restaurant every day for until I retired, and that was going to be the end of it. And it's just like, but for us to be forced into a space of like creativity and pivot is like, I think, essential for all industries at this point, because I think most industries were becoming stale. And so it's like, when the food industry shifts, that means that food writing shifts, and that means food media shifts. And so all of those things get affected by it. So I think it's essential too.
There's a major trickle down effect, which is currently happening live right now.
I know, much to some people's dismay. But it also revitalizes the industry. It's like you come out on the other side, and like you said, we have more than one stream of income. We have, our business model becomes better. It gets healthier. Now restaurants aren't necessarily existing on a single margin from one single service or single offering. It can do a lot of different things. That building doesn't necessarily have to be closed twice a week now. It can be turned into something else. So yeah, we're just getting some really great opportunities at this point, and I hope everybody's taking advantage.
I do too. I mean, I love seeing restaurants put their merch on their menu. Like, I yell about this all the time on Twitter. Like, put your merch on your menu under the cocktails or under the drink list or whatnot. Like, put your merch on your menu. Put your cookbook merch on the menu. Like, just always try to get that extra, that extra check average.
Yeah. Like upsells are incredible. Like it's if you've ever, for those of us who have ever worked in retail, during like college or in between jobs or as a side hustle or a part-time job during the holidays, we all know like the upsell is key. Adding the extras is key, and most people will pay you no mind about them extras if the whole experience was trash. So,
and also, like, your food could be amazing, your product can be amazing, but that rude server will make you never go back. Like, your food could be perfectly cooked, your wine could be perfect, your dessert could be perfect, and then it's that rude server or that manager that is overwhelmed and can't really give you a full, I like to call it romance. Like, romance me when I'm out. Come to my table and talk to me. Like, just romance me. But if you don't have any romance, that great plate of food is not going to keep the customer coming back.
Precisely. I don't think people just, it's relational. Like all of this, so much of this is relational, and it's like you're building this relationship with a person, even if it's just for the one time. And it's just like that relationship. I mean, all of you make or break it on the exchange at that point. And so like, you just have got to be paying attention, and not just to you. I'm like, yes, outside of the money and the bottom line, it's just like those people, no one ever gets on Yelp and writes about the time they had a great meal. They get on Yelp and they talk about you because you was trash, because you were garbage, because this was terrible, because I'll never.
And then at the end, they're like, oh, the chicken was really good. Like, I had to read through this entire paragraph about how bad something was, and then the chicken was great. So
I mean, now to that point about what we need to do, and about like, I love the fact that you kind of gave people a list to start with. And while I do believe that anyone who wants to like really get serious about like a pivot in their restaurant or in their food business, they need to just go ahead and call, make an appointment, pay you. Make sure like, y'all stop, like, cough up the coins, all of them. And don't be asking for no discounted coinage either. But if you could offer, that one lone person out there who is just like, I'm like terrified of what I need to do now. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And they might not necessarily be in New York, but they are definitely experiencing like the pains of like COVID, and like they know that they still have like an idea in them. What is the one thing that you want them to like walk away and just start today? Like go home, go to your computer and whatever it is, like this is one thing you can start doing today that can help you start to just think about what to do next.
I want them to go out to eat. And I say that because when you're in it, and by it, I mean when you're in your mess, you don't look outside of your mess. So I would say to them, go out to eat. Go to that restaurant down the block that's always full, well, prior. But go to a restaurant that makes you uncomfortable and just sit there and just look around and observe at what's happening. Once you start to release the heaviness of what you're thinking, you can start to look around and say, like, I really like how they handled my takeout, or I really like how they took the extra step to get me an extra sauce on the side, or just anything. It could be something so minuscule, but I would encourage them to just put down their stuff and go eat at another restaurant and just watch that happen. And then you will come back to yours and be like, you know what? I'm going to change this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to try this differently. So go do something else. Go eat somewhere else. Go drink something else. Go look at a restaurant website that's not yours, and just really see what's happening outside of your own restaurant.
So now I have to know your favorite, like what's been, and because I have two dining experiences that will live with me forever, I am sure. So, and I was hoping I even if I tried to narrow down like other really good ones, there's two at the top of my list that have not changed in probably 20 years. So for you in the last 5 years, like what has been your best dining experience, like 360 meal, like the food, the service, all of it?
Yikes. Can I just say three quick ones?
Look, you should go for it.
I always, if you follow me on Twitter, you know how much I rave about STK. I stand by STK. Solely because they are consistently consistent. And when I say that, every time I go to STK, I never have a bad experience. And that's even from the time I get an email from them about something to the time I leave. So it's like they're always up to date with like the food holidays, or they provide like a really full happy hour, or they have like a fun party. I went to SDK one time for brunch. They had never done brunch prior, and they just so happened to do brunch on Mother's Day. Now, why somebody would take the chance to do their first brunch on Mother's Day is beyond me. But they knocked it off the park that one time. And I'm just always fascinated at how they keep getting better. And I've been going to SDK since they came to New York. So I always like rave about how great they are, and just the constant change, but they're always consistent.
And I'm going to pause you real quick because I want to make a real quick point about consistency, because I don't get to chat about like just like food business and restaurant very much, because we are definitely talking about a lot of other like culturally relevant things in food. But to this point about consistency, because it's something I used to harp on when I was like managing a kitchen, and when I would have people ask me about, like, well, what are we getting wrong in service or something? And I was just like, y'all, the one thing that will irk just about anyone is a lack of consistency. I shouldn't know that your executive chef is not in the building that day. I, like I shouldn't know there's a change in service. I shouldn't know that you guys had to change the menu at the last minute. I shouldn't detect any of that when it comes time for service. And it's, for me, it's just like, I don't want to come to your place one week, love absolutely everything I had, and then come back the following week, order it again because I'm so amped. And now I've invited 3 friends to come share it with me. And all of a sudden it's not the same. And I know precisely why it's not the same. And I can tell my friends why it's not the same, but they don't know. They just know that Tiffany raved about this particular meal or this particular dish, brought us all out here to try it, and we trust her judgment, and then we had it, and it was okay. It was just like nothing will make me more irate than the lack of consistency.
Which brings me to the next restaurant. It is like I've been eating at Pio Pio here in New York City for like as old as I am. That's how long I've been eating at this restaurant. It is a very simple chicken rice Peruvian restaurant. And when I tell you every time I go, it is consistent. Like I don't even think they've ever had a bad day. And if they have had a bad day, I don't notice it each time I'm there. Like it's consistent servers, consistent food, consistent drinks, and which is why I love it so much because I've never had a bad experience there. So consistently consistent is a thing that I like scream to the top of my lungs. Like there's so many restaurants out here, but a restaurant that is consistently consistent will always have customers. And then my third place I could toss up, but it is a Black-owned restaurant in Harlem. It's called Vinetaria. It's on 119th and 8th Avenue. It's owned by this really fabulous Black woman. Again, every time I go there, the food is consistent. They have this really great squid ink pasta that I love, like right in the heart of Harlem. And the wine is always good. They always have the best creme brulee. Like every time I go there, it's squid ink pasta, creme brulee, no matter what's happening. Like those are things that's going to be on my table no matter what. So consistently consistent. I can't stop saying it enough.
Oh man. Has there been anything that you've had in the last like 7 months that surprised you? Like as far as like someone who's killing it in the takeout or delivery space where you were just like, you know what? I did not see this coming from them, but okay, nailed it. So, or anything you've eaten that's been new that has just been like really just impressive and has left an impression on you?
That is a really hard one, but I will say that takeout wise, I love how Sweet Green has really transformed their business throughout this whole time. Like I'm a food nerd, so I sign up to the newsletters, like I read them each time they come in. And I just love how Sweet Greens went from like really like hearty, salads and all that stuff. But then Corona happened and they like transformed on a quick pivot to really great takeout salads. And then they have like whole meals you can take out, which from what I read was planned for 5 years from now, and they transformed in a month. So I've been really paying attention to how Sweet Green has transformed throughout this whole time, and I'm really impressed with it.
I feel like some people definitely, when they stepped into like the takeout delivery space, I think they're doing better than they think they were going to. And it might be like one of those things where people have to maybe step back and go, well, maybe like dining, like having a dining room might not be our biggest strength. I think this is just one of them opportunities to kind of look at how we've been feeding people and maybe think and consider like, well, maybe the dining room experience isn't the way we shine. That maybe it's not the best way for us to serve our customers. And so I would definitely encourage people like, look, if you find a place that you've been eating out and all of a sudden magically that during this time, their takeout and delivery is infinitely better than their dine-in service, go ahead and drop them a note. Let them know. Look, y'all.
Yeah, and I do think, like I said, when you sit down and you write a menu, you don't write it to go. You write it and you create it to be ate at a table within a certain time span. So now with people working from home, I think that takeout menu is going to be restructured. I think we're going to see really great chefs make some really dope takeout food in the next 2 years. I'm excited to see what the new takeout format looks like.
You're right, because I'm just like, y'all. I mean, I think, while the challenge is definitely different, I don't think it's going to be anything outside of anyone's abilities at this point. It's just like,
No,
it's
not at all.
no. So yeah,
You
now
kind of
that
have to stop and think about it for a second.
exactly. And like, so now that you've mentioned the next 2 years, I suspect
Mm-hmm.
you are one of these people who can like look into the next few years and really detect food trends and things that are coming. Um, so outside of not being able to predict when people will just wear a freaking mask so we can all get out the house again, when we are able to go back out and have like tactical eating experiences, what are your predictions for what's like coming down the road and what people should be really like paying attention to?
Um, my number one prediction, and I believe I tweeted this on Twitter in a rapid fire tweet.
I told y'all to follow her on Twitter now. Like her Twitter game is on point.
Yes, please follow me on Twitter. I really do see that electronics at the table will be happening more and more. I really do think that when we sit down, there will be no more menus. It'll all be on a screen, and you just select what you want from the screen. I do think there will be a server still, but I don't think we will have paper menus. It'll all be electronic. I think you will pay electronically in the next 2 years. Um, like I said, more takeout. I believe more people will, of course, still want to come out to eat. But I do see family style, tapas style platters coming back to the table. I don't see those really like fine luxury 10-course tasting menus coming back anytime soon. I do think that there will be a spin on tasting menus, but it'll be more comfortable family style tasting menus coming back in the next few years.
I like this. I think I like this. I mean, I'm hoping for trends towards like more like family style dining and things that are a bit more interactive where you're like passing plates and stuff like that. I definitely see that less of the kind of like clumsy looking at the menu kind of scenario and like even the menu moment being a bit more engaging. And I definitely see like really train because you don't see me having a conversation right now. Uh, I was like, they're lucky I can edit things out because I'd be sending a strong note to MTA. But and then the idea of like redefining what service really looks like. I think because restaurants have had to pivot into takeout and to delivery and like pickup, the interactions with diners will look really different because that idea of like people just kind of sitting at a table and the servers kind of playing to the background. I don't think we'll lose all of it, but I think there's going to be a bit like more authentic engagement between servers and like to your point about treating staff better, like all of these ideas that have popped up about how to incorporate your staff in a much more meaningful way, like when a server or a bartender or a line cook creates a dish for the menu, that their names are on the menu and that they're credited with that creation, and just like creating a restaurant culture that's more shared the way food culture is. I'm looking forward forward to seeing who picks that up and who runs with it, because I find like they will probably be out in front as far as where people want to go to eat, because this experience about, oh, wait a minute, you mean like the guy who was like bussing our table earlier is the guy who came up with today's soup that's on the special. It's just like, yep, that's him. So like I love this idea of making restaurants more of a collaborative and like a collective effort to get food on the table in front of a diner. And I think diners will appreciate that one as well.
Yeah, and I do think just from what we've seen in the past couple months is like the explosion of food media and the explosion of the treatment of staff members. I really do think moving forward, like no one can afford to be caught out there right now. Like no one can afford, like everybody has to dot their I's and cross their T's. So moving forward, I do think there will be a change in how restaurants treat their staff. And I'm excited to see it, coming up in the kitchens. I specifically chose not to work for chefs who would yell and curse and throw pots and pans at me. Like, I just knew that wasn't my thing. I'm like, if my parents don't treat me this way, why would I allow you to treat me that way, So I always seek chefs who, all chefs yell. I yelled at someone 3 days ago in the restaurant. All chefs yell, but it's how it's done. It's the verbiage that's used. And I do think that will be different this time around. Chefs cannot afford to lose any more than they already have.
Absolutely not. And if they want healthy, and if we want a healthy restaurant industry, we want one that like really flourishes, you got to have a buy-in from everybody who works for it. And, the fact that for a long time, like servers were treated as disposable, dishwashers were treated as disposable. Oh, I can just replace you. And it was just like, but that energy goes out everywhere. Like it sits in your food. It sits in your dining room. It's just like, because then eventually your diners know that they're disposable.
Yeah. When a chef tells you that they can replace you the next day, I was always that line coach that was like, okay,
there you
okay, let me know if you want me to stay for the rest of my shift or not.
Like,
I could go.
Like for real. We don't have to continue on.
Right. And I know everybody's not like that. Every coach, every line coach is not like that. But I really want us to get out of that space moving forward.
Yeah.
Like the old school way worked at one point and then it didn't work at one point, but I think there's always a better way.
And I feel like the old school way probably worked for one guy at one point at one restaurant for about 4 or 5 weeks, and then somebody was like, you know what, I like what he's doing here, I'm gonna just keep doing it. And it was just like, at no point did we go, you know what, that shit's crazy, how about we don't do that. So these last few minutes, I got 3 questions for you. One, how is that Fenty skincare situation working out? I just got mine today. I need the tea, and I need the facts, and I need the honest truth.
See, this is the part of the food and lifestyle brand. So this is the lifestyle portion of it.
Exactly.
So I just started it today.
Okay.
I did like the texture of the product so far.
Right.
I am curious to see what it does on black skin.
Okay.
So
all right. She said it for everybody. We'll see. And what's funny though, like your point about like lifestyle and food, there's things that I wish people would understand. Like being a cook in a restaurant, one thing specifically, and I don't know if it's just me or if I'm sure other like people have felt it, is that I was always on a hunt for great skincare, because working in a restaurant leaves your skin looking like garbage if you're not mindful. But you also need a routine that's quick, because if you don't leave the restaurant till 3 a.m. And your ass got to be back there at 10 o'clock, you're trying to get as much sleep as possible. So like your skincare routine has to be like effective and thorough, but it also has to be quick. And so
you literally just want to wash the grease off your face from the end of the night.
Just
You want to wash the garlic off of you. You
all
want to
of
wash
it.
the onions off of you. You want to wash the fryer oil off of you. So you need
Oh.
something else to do it.
So yeah, so for me, I tell people, I'm like, working in food doesn't separate you from things. It really puts you in the thick of it. And like I've always had an obsession with like fashion, and so I always found that food and fashion were quite parallel. They're like two of the only businesses in the world that are extremely seasonal, that really work on textures and colors and feeding the eyes first, and it can cover a lot of things. Like they're both essential for life. Like you need something to cover your ass and you need something in your belly every day, and those can, and the range of what you spend and the level of luxury and like things like sourcing product and all of those conversations happen in both worlds. So I always found fashion and food to kind of have these amazing parallels.
Absolutely.
So
and it's funny, when I started my food blog, even when I was coming up with the name for a blog, I'm like, okay, I eat out all the time, I dine out all the time, and then people always compliment me on how I look, or my style of dress, or my glasses. So I'm like, eating fabulously, like eating, and then I was obsessed with Kimora Lee Simmons at that time. So I'm like, fabulosity, like Kimora never looked crazy. So I'm like, okay, eating fabulously is going to be the name of my blog. And a part of that is like knowing where your food comes from, knowing what's in your skincare, like knowing just all about being fabulous. So that's from, again, where does your meat come from, all the way down to, is your polish on your nails hurting you, all the way down to like we said, what's in your skincare, what are your favorite companies helping or hurting. Like that's the whole thing where I stand by. Like you have to eat fabulously at all times.
Absolutely. And like eating makes you really conscious of all the other things that you put in and on the body, including and up to and including people. So like, look.
Yeah, when you eat horribly, you feel it.
Yeah, every time.
But then when you eat fabulously, like when you eat fresh food, you eat at a really great restaurant, or you look really fabulous.
It's true. It's true. Now, my other question, the other question is, or second one is, there is a tweet that I was hoping to get a bit more understanding about.
Okay.
It was from yesterday, right before the one about the crab legs. And I was like, the crab leg one I understood, because like that one just gets in your spirit and you'd be like, really? But like, why would you even do that? But the tweet was and I'm paraphrasing, something around like, do y'all like to eat out because you don't look like you do or act like you do?
Oh God. Okay. So again, can I just plug my Twitter for a second,
yeah,
please?
I'm trying to find it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. It says, do y'all actually enjoy eating and dining? Because a lot of y'all seem like you don't. It's like,
so first of all, follow me on Twitter.
I'm telling y'all, follow her on Twitter to get your life.
Yeah, please come join me on Twitter. I love Twitter. So I'm probably gonna get in trouble for saying this. So
you're in a safe place.
Anytime I meet people who are in food or interested in food or come to me about food or want to pick my brain about being a chef or anything, I always tell them, do you like food or do you like to eat? Or are you eating just to be full? There's eating for pleasure and there's eating to be full. A lot of people naturally only know how to eat to be full. And if you're eating for pleasure, that's a whole nother thing. But this industry is so tough and it's so tiring. And there's always that debate where, do I go to culinary school? Do I work my way up? Do I do this? Do I do that? I personally always recommend, if you can go to culinary school, go to culinary school. It kind of starts you off at a certain point a lot of people don't naturally have the drive and the longevity to start as a dishwasher and work their way up. So if you can, I always recommend it. But the way things are going right now in food, it's oversaturated, which a lot of things are. And it's just always like the same thing over and over again. It's crab legs this, it's salmon this, it's fried parsley this. I'm just like, do you guys really like the art of eating? Point blank. Do you like to eat or ours, or do y'all just hate everything? Because, and like I tweeted yesterday, once you get to a certain point in your career of your line cook, of your cook, of your chef, none of these fried crab legs ever make it to you because you've already blocked that out.
Right.
You know what things are. You know how things are prepared. You know. So that's why I'm always like, these things should not frustrate y'all anymore. But if you haven't gone through those ranks, in my personal opinion, these things are still going to frustrate you. So do you like to eat or do you not like to eat? Like, what is it? If you like to eat, these fried crab legs on Twitter should not be frustrating you the way they are.
This is true. This is true. You're right. I mean, I'm so glad you answered it that way. I would have taken any answer, trust. But it is a question I constantly ask people as well. And not necessarily people who want to get into food for a professional vocation, just people in general when I have to eat out with them, which is why I rarely do that. I do eat alone outside of my house very frequently because eating with other people is just taxing. And so, because when people are like, "Oh, Tiff, we want to go eat with you," I'm like, "Well, I have a couple of questions and if you can clear these questions, then you can come eat with me. But if you cannot, and it's always that question. It's like, okay, so do you eat for the caloric intake or do you eat for pleasure?"
Yeah, my friends already know what type of time I'm on. My friends already know. Do not take Chris certain places. Do not give Chris certain things because she's going to tear them up. Oh. And yes. And I'm not one of those people who go in restaurants and critique everything. Like, I love BBQs just as much as I love Jean Georges. Yeah. Like, when it's not my job, I take my chef's coat off and I relax.
That's me.
But I say this all the time, like, food is social, it's political, it's financial. Like, all these things come into play about food. And a lot of our upbringing also comes into play with that as well. So if you were, if you were that kid who had to finish all the food on your plate because your mom couldn't afford to throw anything away, that changes your palate as you get older.
Absolutely.
So that reflects on the type of food you eat or the type of food that you eat when you have money versus, a person who had a really, quote unquote, wealthier background. They were exposed to different types of foods, which also affects you later in life. So I always try to pay attention to that as well when I'm out. So yeah, people swear they want to come out and eat with me. And I'm like, all right, if you pass out, it's not my problem. It's not my fault. I told you we eat fabulously over here all the time.
I can't help you after that. Like, I'm not going to pre-screen meals for you. No, don't call me and ask me what's on the menu and what you should eat. You should do your research. Don't do this. Don't make this work for me. Like, I'm not going to labor.
Don't even do your research. Just trust me and know that we eat fabulously all the time, and I'm not going to have y'all here looking crazy.
Like, if you really need more information, I'm going to give you the name of the restaurant, and then you can do what you got to do with that information. This is what Google is for. But you don't need to come. Don't make this a labor for me to take you someplace. We'll never do it again. I promise you. So the last question is, where can we find you on socials outside of Twitter? Because I'm not playing with y'all. If y'all don't follow her on Twitter, I can't help you past this point. Like, I've done all I can to help your life get better. And at this point, if you don't follow her on Twitter, you just neglected your own priorities. So outside of Twitter, where else can we follow you? How else can we support your work? And then what are your future plans for, like, the Mies groups so that we can be paying attention?
Well, first and foremost, again, I would love for you guys to follow me on Twitter. That's at Eating Fab. And then I'm on Instagram at Eating Fabulously, the full word spelled out. My food and lifestyle website is www.eatingfabulously.com. And you can also find me at themeadgroup.com. The Mead Group, when this whole coronavirus pandemic started, like I said, I got laid off, and I quietly just said, God, make it so that I don't have to go back to work if I absolutely don't have to. Like, let this be my time to really show up and show out for the Mead Group. And he has done that. So the next 2 years, I want the Mead Group to be my full-time business. I want restaurant clients. I want independent chefs. I'm actually thinking about how I can put together like an influencer package, just like a jumpstart influencer package at the Mead Group as well. Eating Fabulously, I want to turn into a full-fledged lifestyle brand. So I've actually been researching my own flatware, glassware, and plates. So it'll be plates, glassware, forks, and knives. It'll be merch. I have my own online merch store as well that you can find when you head to the website. So just like build a umbrella company around restaurant, food, and lifestyle for the next few years.
All right. Well, I love it, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for seeing my tweet about putting me on something, and then it was like, you could come on my podcast.
Man.
Absolutely.
That is all for this week's episode. Thank you to our guests for spending some time with us, and thank you for listening in and for being a part of the Flyest Click in podcasting. If you love these conversations, be sure to download, subscribe, comment, and share. You can get further connected with the Afros and Knives community by following us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget to visit our website, afrosandknives.com, and sign up for our newsletter. Afros and Knives does this work only with the financial support of our Patreon community. To become a patron, please visit patreon.com/Afros and Knives and pledge your monthly support. We are working on expanding into video as well as offering patron-only content this year, and you don't want to miss out. Until next week, may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be at peace.